Welcome to Life Esteem, a program committed to delivering information that's important to you and your community.
Hello and welcome to Life Esteem. Always great to have you as a viewer. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, today we're going to talk with a dynamite leader in our community by the name of Joe Trojak. And he has a message for you and for youth. And we're so glad to have you on the show, man.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
great
indeed.
To be here.
And in way of introduction, Joe, you're an entrepreneur, a businessman, you're an author, and a motivational speaker. And we just had the opportunity to have Joe up at the Harrisburg Area Community College for what's called Project Youth, and I thought you did a fantastic job.
Thank you. It was so neat to see these young people, and they were very focused. They are anxious to help their community, and they were looking for guidance. And it was neat to talk to them as a group and talk to them individually too. So we had a good day.
Well, let's start with your business first, because that kind of came first, right? Your entrepreneurship. Are you from Harrisburg, by the way?
I'm from Middletown originally. And so grew up in the Middletown area, went to Seven Stars Grade School, then I went to Bishop McDevitt High School, off to Harrisburg Area Community College, and then to Westchester, which we have in common. And then after that I studied some audio engineering at Lebanon Valley College, and it was between HAC and Westchester that we started designing Progressive Enterprises Sound Studios, and we'll be in our 30th year starting in April.
Fantastic. Wow, fantastic.
Now, you told me that one of the things that you hope to, with the young people that you all had at Project Youth is to really have them get some better understanding of business.
Absolutely.
And how to prepare. Tell me more about how you presented that to them.
At Project Youth, what I basically did was, you had me as the closing speaker. So there, I just gave them a few tidbits. And one of them was, find an older person in your neighborhood, your family, and find a couple of things you could do to help them. We're coming out of winter. There's spring cleanup. People always could use help carrying groceries, being helped to the store. But when you do that, take a moment to listen. A lot of older people have great insight to give you, and they want to talk. A lot of older people love to talk, and take a moment to listen, and you can gain some great wisdom. And then I said, find someone who's younger, and do things to help them with their schoolwork, help them through a problem they may be having. And the other thing I really wanted them to do is, you're going to be graduating. I want you to graduate. I really felt the students they're on the way to graduating. But once in a while, I'm hearing students saying, I don't want to walk. I don't want to do the cap and gown. And I told them, this is very important because there are grandparents and parents who sacrificed for you to do this. And more importantly, there's young people, they need to see you as that role model, and this is a goal for them. That one day I get to put the cap and gown, graduate, and then go on into my career.
That's right. But I want to remind you, too, that you also spoke to those adults, and I thought that was an excellent session as well. And those are usually counselors and teachers from area schools, and I thought you did a real good job with that.
Thank you. It was a chance for me to introduce the Fire Up Now concept that we're doing. I love going to high schools, colleges, and other situations where I can encourage the next leaders and entrepreneurs. And I really like to get students focused on their career and how important it is to get started thinking and planning for that career right now in school. And also how to start becoming a professional. This is the way you want your phone to answer a certain way, not just, hey, I'm here. You want to start being more professional. The way you conduct yourself on Facebook, on social media, Instagram, all these different things is very important right now, because when the time comes, then you have a good track record, a great background. The other thing I really enjoy is encouraging the next generation of entrepreneurs. So we put together the strategies for freelancing, and they do a one sheet, and we really go through and help them to build the map to get there.
All right. Good stuff.
So is that the focus of your book?
Yes.
Okay, which is?
Focus on Your Light, co-authored with John Thrush, who was with me through a lot of the construction of the studio. We go through the story of my family coming from Europe, how we settled in the United States, how we built our own homes in the Pittsburgh area, but we always were in a situation where we didn't have lots of funds, so doing it yourself was very important. We built our facility. It's a $500,000 facility in $1999 for $150,000. How'd we do that? By listening to the Penn State game on Saturday, not driving up the Happy Valley to watch it. And we did a lot of going to Home Depot, or wore out 2 Home Depot cards.
right.
We would go to lumber auctions, anything we could do to save money. Until we got to a certain point, we had to have some professionals to get everything done with the wiring, to get everything done with the air conditioning. But it was quite the experience, and my interns and students were like, this is neat, you got to put this in a book.
Gotta do it.
So we took us about 9 years, with a lot of different family situations, taking care of my mom through illness that postponed this. But it's finished now, we're getting great reviews, and we're excited about it.
Good stuff. And your book, Focus on Your Light, is targeted towards who mostly?
I would say it is going to be for a lot of people who are teenagers into the mid-20s.
Okay.
That are like, what am I going to do with life? And these are the steps that I took. Maybe you want to consider them, and you could definitely learn from our takeaways.
Okay.
And my students and interns have a lot of takeaways in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is what I did, but it could apply to what you want to do. It's also for people who are in their middle of their career and like, I want to change. I want to do something different. Okay, look at it from that perspective,
Yeah.
and we can give you some guidance as well.
I was going to say to you, I read through your book, and I remember thinking to myself, no, this stuff applies to everybody. It all depends on where you are in your stage of
Exactly.
life and your understanding. And so there's some great nuggets in there, and
Thank
so
you.
I would suggest any and everybody pick up the book,
Please,
Focus on Your Life. Yeah.
And you have another book too that is coming out, you said, that you're finalizing, which is
The next book that we're going to be working on is called Cherish Your Freedom.
Cherish Freedom.
Now, this one's going to be a little more of a somber tone. What I see with a lot of people in the United States is like, oh, geez, we have it so rough. It's like, you really don't have a clue to what roughness is.
I hear you.
My dad knew roughness. My father escaped communism when it was, and the family was punished. The family back in Slovakia was punished when he left.
Sure.
So the book's going to be called Cherish Your Freedom.
Yeah.
And it's going to also extend into people with disabilities and sickness and how they overcome to find new freedom
Yeah.
despite obstacles they have. So that's one we're going to start developing, and that will be coming up eventually.
That
Yes.
sounds powerful. I remember at Camp Hill Prison, Pat and I used to work through the Pennsylvania Prison Society, and we taught parenting classes there. And I'll never forget this one guy saying, and actually, he actually wrote a book, but he said, I was literally free, before I got out of Camp Hill Prison. He said, the way I did it was, I freed myself internally.
That's
my
important.
mind. He said, because when you may be in a situation where he said, but when you're locked up from the inside, then you're really locked up. And so I never forgot that. So I like to focus on your light and cherish your freedom, because it really is kind of all about you and how you, decide or determine to live your life. So it's
The
good stuff.
attitude, especially in education, is the most important step. And once you start getting over the obstacles, the fear, then you can start getting somewhere and find the people who could guide you.
That's right.
And that makes all the difference.
It does. I remember a long time ago, Jesse Jackson said, your attitude will determine your altitude.
That's
right.
good. That's
You
true.
know, I like that. Your attitude is going to tell you how far up you're going to go. So anyhow, let's talk about your business a little bit more, because a lot of people out there are interested in going into business. It wasn't easy. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but you had what we call passion and
Yes.
determination. So let's talk about what it takes to be a successful business person and to really speak to the folks out there who are, kind of on the fence.
First, you have to really look inside and what makes you have passion. What excites you? In the book, I talk about when I was a very little kid in the airport, Harrisburg International Airport, the planes would take off. And they were the old propeller planes, and it just had a beautiful sound. That caught my attention. The pipe organ in church caught my attention. I talk about actually trying to crawl into it, and Mr. Mansky kind of pulled me down. And a lot of people really, they never knew this story. So finding out and identifying what really makes you tick inside, what was going to rock your world, is the first start. The next thing is baby steps. You can't just go, in most times, right to the top of something. And this is a dangerous thing. I see a lot of students. I was working with a student a few years back, and he's going to be the greatest film producer. I'm like, okay, that's neat. And then we started asking the more important questions. Well, how is your writing skills? Do you know how to handle a camera? Do you understand how the audio is put together? Do you know how to build sets? And he really didn't have a lot of those steps.
No.
And I told him, those are important. Figure out which ones you want to have. Even if it's as simple as, I can drive a truck, I got my CDL. Then you are an asset for a film company. So it's going to take little steps. We started off part-time. First thing we did was just some sound effects for a radio station, and then we had, you know, a little thing to score for a slideshow back then, and then a short little film that was actually shot on film. And from there, then we just found little steps, and I worked part-time at a cassette duplicating company, which was Spectrum, then became Crown. And through there, that is when I met Investors Hotline, which was Joe Bradley, and one day just he was fascinated with my curiosity for making sure his product was duplicated properly. And he said, "Would you like to move to Baltimore?" I said, "Well, I just built this studio. Maybe we could bring the equipment up here." And he took a big risk because I drove down there with my van and took all of his tape machines, all of the gear, and brought them up.
Wow.
I could have gone the opposite direction to a flea market, but he trusted me. And we started doing the production at my studio, and that was the key. I've got steady work. I can now go completely on my own.
Wow.
So I gave my 2-month notice to the mastering company at Crown Magnetics. I could not be your mastering engineer, but stayed in touch because so many of the projects I did, they would duplicate.
Wow.
And we expanded from there.
Good stuff.
Now, one of the things that was interesting to me, and you talk about your studio, and right now you work a lot with bands
Yes,
in that regard, but you're a musician yourself.
correct.
Okay, that was your passion, I see.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and in that regard I understand you play the piano, the organ, and there's another instrument. What's the name?
Mainly keyboards,
Yeah,
synthesizers.
there's-
I'm a
okay.
keyboard player,
You're
yes.
a keyboard player,
Yes.
actually. So is there opportunities for folks to come into your studio then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so all right, talk about that.
What we
what they
could,
could
when
do.
you come to our studio, there's a whole host of areas we can help you with. We could do your project from beginning to end.
Okay.
Where you come in with your compositions, we help guide you through the process. You do the pre-production. And there's a band we did called The Greatest Funeral Ever. They did exactly that same thing. Great improv guys. It's 4 of them playing the standard, guitar, bass, drums, and keyboards, and then they have a brass section with them. And we basically did everything, including the final mastering for them. Now, a lot of other bands will come in and they will just set up, and they're there for one big reason. We can really deliver a great drum sound. A nice big room. It's really acoustically set properly, and we have some tricks we've learned on where to place microphones and what to do with them, that they can then go back to their home studio and have that feeling of we were in a big studio, and then they can do some of their smaller things at home, because that's the way the business has changed. And I can't fight the trend because I started this with my first studio in 1988. When all the electronic MIDI came out, I built my first studio, and all the big boys were, "What are you doing? How are you doing this?" Well, this is kind of a new way to do things, and people are a little nervous about it, but we made it work. So now I see, okay, the technology's come, and I can't fight this, but we encourage them. So they'll come at different stages. They'll come back for mixing, and some of my students from Hack come, and they do their projects, and
Good
we just like
stuff.
doing it.
Good stuff. I noticed in the Project Youth, when you're speaking to the adults, that some of them were like right in step with you, understood where you're coming from. A lot of people, the technology and the technical language that you were using, I think some of us were sort of like, okay. But the point is, though, that you can bring something into these schools that may not already exist, a body of knowledge, this kind of thing. How receptive have the schools been to, your kind of passion, the work that you do, and introducing students to your product?
Once they get over the initial fear of who is this guy, what's he trying to do, the students lock onto it.
Okay.
And the observant faculty and the observant administration watches the face of the students, and they're like, okay, he's connecting with them. And that's the most important thing, is to get their passion and get them to focus on what they possibly can do.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I like to do is, as a regular adjunct at Hack, I bring the real world and what I'm doing to the classroom all the time. Almost every class, I take a break and said, this is what I was up to this week. And this is how it went well, this is where it was a challenge, and this is what you should take away from it. So when we do the Fire Up Now presentations, it's very much like that. This is with the experiences I had. These are the experiences you need to expect, especially dealing with stress, dealing with your accountant, preparing for your taxes.
Yeah.
The relationship, you should start with your attorney before you need your attorney.
Wow.
all those little things, and they just appreciate having that roadmap
Sure.
that they can start to look through.
Sure. I thought it was powerful also that you had that one, picture up. They had a lot of different pictures, but you were looking at the graduation there, and you could point out each one of those persons, what they're doing now,
Yes.
and how that affected them. Yeah, so it has to be rewarding.
Oh yeah, that was at Lebanon Valley College, and I start with the one, was the first day I taught there, and I just handed the camera to a teaching assistant and said, snap a picture of this blackboard, because I had everyone's name, and the first thing I teach is networking and connectivity. And then on a follow-up slide, you actually see what they're doing and how I stay in touch with those students, and that same thing is happening now with the students at HAC, which is
Fantastic.
great.
Fantastic.
Well, social media helps that too, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, it's so much easier today.
Yes.
So much easier. I mean, when you and I were at Westchester, it was hard to stay in touch with people.
That's right, because, of course,
know,
we were different eras.
Different eras, but I'm saying
same
today,
principle, yeah.
oh, what's your phone number? Share
Facebook.
quickly.
Yeah.
And they can learn so much about someone within a week.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Maybe sometimes too much.
Well, that's where you got to watch the balance.
That's where you gotta watch the
balance. And
balance.
everything is very important.
That's really true.
Yes.
This Pat and I, Pat's a business person, and so we've traveled and gone to some, conferences, whatever. And the one thing I learned that will stick with me forever is that it takes teamwork to make your dream work. It takes teamwork to make your dream work. React to that. How does that play out in your field? How did that happen for you, and how do you help others through your book to build that team, that effective team?
Well, with the team that built the studio, my father was the leader because he had the vision on how we could actually physically build it.
Okay.
But my mother, from her heart, was the cook. So when you came to help us, oh my gosh, Mom fed you. And she fed you European dishes, her own versions of chili and everything, so you knew, hey, we're going to have a good time, and we had fun working on this. We did make a point to have a lot of fun. So that was an area just where you made people feel like family. And the more you can do that, that makes a big difference. And I try to carry on the tradition now, Stu, with my interns who come in, and they quickly understand, wow, this is different. Jesse's one of our interns right now. He was not having a good experience at his other internship.
Right.
And he came here and said, oh, this is so much better.
Okay.
And we're putting him to work. When you're an intern at Progressive, you're pressing record, you're moving the microphones, you're not sitting on the side observing.
Okay.
You're involved with the process.
You had a retired military, was he a major or a captain that also was someone who pushed you and told you that this has
Yes.
to happen? Yeah.
That was Major Dick Winters.
Okay.
From Band of Brothers. We had the honor to work with him. Band of Brothers took off and was hugely successful, and he had something was bothering him. It was like, wait a minute, I need to get clarification.
Okay.
And this is something that went back to my days at Bishop McDevitt High School, when Mr. Fry, who was one of my history teachers, said, history is not what is, it's what people say it is. And that bothered me because there's also something that actually happened.
That's right.
And that's where we got to get to the final truth, the crucible, with Major Winters. So we would show him scenes. Brian Kreider would set this all up, and we would show him scenes from Band of Brothers, and he would do his own running commentary.
Wow.
That's the way Spielberg saw it. This is the way it really happened. And that made a heck of an impression on my staff. I had one of my interns back then who knew Band of Brothers because I was just being introduced to it. And he was just thrilled. He couldn't believe we were actually doing this. So in the process, Major Winters comes to the studio and he's like, this is amazing. How'd you build all this? Why is that? What does this do? He was very curious, so he got to know what we were up to. He also got to know my parents. And that was very special because he saw and spoke with my father, who saw World War II from the opposite side. And they had some very interesting conversations about that.
Okay.
So, but there were points when he goes, Joe, you need to talk more about this. This is leadership. So he knew about the book. Him and his wife Ethel were actually my first editors, just trying to give me some coaching with it. And sadly, he passed on, but he did do the foreword for the book. And he was like, Joe, you need to get out and do this. This is leadership. People need to hear about this.
Fantastic stuff. So he in essence, was part of your team, right?
Yes, he was my mentor for doing this. If time had lined up differently, I would have been the opening speaker. He would have been the closing speaker. We would have had a heck of a team.
man.
And it just, time-wise, it never worked out. But
Yeah. Oftentimes people don't see the technical parts as part of the team. So attorneys,
Yes.
right? Accountants. I heard you mention accountants. Those persons are all part of your team, right?
Absolutely.
So if you don't trust them or have a good working relationship with them, hey, so how did you build your team then that really made, you're talking about 30-something years now. That means you've been successfully in business and doing good work, obviously, and also overcoming some obstacles, I'd imagine, right? So,
Well, one of the things that changes constantly is the technology. Every 5 to 7 years, okay, it's a new computer with new software, and updated software, but new hardware. And right now, Marshall Deasy is our technical director. He's the studio, he's one of our main producers.
Okay.
And he really keeps that fine-tuned for me. So, we were able to delegate a lot of those tasks. And that's real important, is you can find people that you can trust and who are there looking out for you. And that's tricky, and a lot of people have that as an obstacle too. We've been very blessed. We do not have a pilferage problem. Everything's been very respectful, and that is one thing. And I think that because people realize, wait a minute, this is a good family. This is a good situation. This is not something that should be messed with. It should be treated with respect and improved upon.
That's great stuff. Yeah.
Well, let's talk again and get back to your book in the event that someone may not have come in the beginning. And the name of your book again is?
Focus on your light.
Okay, but I like the Finding the Spark to Forge Your Own Path in Business. And it's interesting when we always talk about titles, it's that tagline that really captures people in regard to this is something I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
So how can people get a copy of your book?
If you're an electronic reader, it's available at Amazon.
Okay.
So you could get on your Nook and everything like that if you like to read on your iPad. Locally in Harrisburg, we're over at the Midtown Scholar.
Wonderful.
Okay.
And then over in Lingelstown, we're over at St. Thomas Roasters. And actually, Chapter 13 was started in St. Thomas Roasters. I had the privilege of helping now Judge Tully, Bill Tully, run for judge of Dauphin County. And we sat there one day and we were talking about Fire Up Now, and I said, "What's new with you?" And he goes, "Well, I think I want to run for judge." I said, "Really?" So I thought it was neat, and we kept asking the question for a few weeks. So, who's going to be your chairman?
Yeah.
And then finally I said, I think we came to the agreement that I should give it a shot.
All right.
And it worked out. Marilyn Dowling came and we were co-chairs. And but I put that chapter in there because it was really about grassroots politics. It was really about someone who just was very good and how the whole community came to rally behind him. And it was just an interesting story because we were told over and over, this isn't going to work. Don't bother.
Okay.
And that's just something you got to come over. So there was a lot of good light and positivity in that story. We put it in.
Fantastic. This is good stuff.
Definitely.
I don't want to throw us off because I know we're going to run out of time here real soon. But there's a big ruling recently with, what's his name, Pharrell and another artist, and Robin Thicke. And they were ruled to have plagiarized the, the Marvin Gaye song. And everybody's saying, wow, that's a slippery slope we're going down.
It is.
Yeah, just real quick, what did you think about that?
I haven't studied it all, but I mean, whenever I compose something, I got to sit back and look back, okay, make sure I'm not borrowing too much. Everyone's music is built on the experience of what they've heard. So sometimes, I remember being 13, 14 thinking, that's a great song I'm writing, to find out, that's a riff from King Crimson. I can't use that. So the scary part, and I talked to other people like Sherry Mullins, my publisher, with the royalties changing and everything, people are getting a little Sue happy in that area. That's the scary part. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of this goes. But I mean, Ghostbusters was a big story years ago on how that happened. And so my advice is when you create something, try to keep it as original as possible. And then, verify that you've got something that was created, and make sure you're not copying too closely.
When you think about
but can't we do that easier today too? Because aren't there sites that you can go to do just that? To see if anything maybe be plagiarizing or something else is out there similar to that?
Well, part of it is sampling and recording.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times in the hip hop situations, they're actually taking other songs and then building around them. So trail has to be done properly.
Yeah.
But there are different ways to just research quickly, and you could find.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing that's beautiful. You don't have to go to a library
Or
somewhere and
anything
find
along that-
records.
yeah.
No, you could actually start searching, and between Wikipedia, YouTube, iTunes, Napster, and all these other different sites, you could quickly start to get a feel for what's going on and make sure you're not. But it's also going to take a trained ear to
Yes.
say, wait a minute, that sounds too familiar.
Yeah, yeah.
And let's double check where we're at.
See, I'm like a little kid. I'm thinking of now think about this, all the songs that have been created over the years, millions of them, and you mean to tell me there's some way that you're not going to at least sound a little bit like another song? And I thought, wow, I don't know. But I do understand that you don't want people just to wholesale take
No,
the information.
that's-
But that's the kind of thing you have to be mindful of, in your industry. So I just wanted to point that out that there are major things that happen out here that can affect what we do here as business people. So we always got to be up on top of that kind of stuff, So
Absolutely.
Interesting. But Joe, I tell you, I thought you're, again, as a motivational speaker and just as someone who grew up in this community, because you're concerned about this community. And you were going to tell me a story about growing up and being at Bishop McDevitt and then going over to William Penn, and we didn't finish that.
Can I tell that story?
tell it
I
real
like
quick. Go ahead.
Students and young people need hope. And there was a time when I was very concerned about the future of Harrisburg. So I would go to McDevitt, and I would play in the tennis team. And this is the spring of '77, I'm a freshman.
Okay.
And then we would get in the cars, Mr. Alsop was our coach, we'd get over to William Penn, and then we'd practice. And then 5 o'clock or so, okay, how am I going to get to Middletown? Well, I took the CAT bus. So the CAT bus would leave there and it would go to Market Street and I had to wait for the Middletown bus. And I remember it was probably a Ray and Derrick back then, but it's a CVS today, standing on that step going, what's going to happen to this town?
Yeah.
It just seemed like it had potential, but it just seemed like it needed so much help.
Yeah.
Had I known that on 9/9/99, when they opened the Whitaker Center, that I'd be the keyboard player playing the blues
Ain't that something?
for the opening right in front of me, literally when they closed the street, and then to come in and do the Hershey play in the Whitaker Center, and how many times I went to the Hilton. So the charge we need to give to young people is hold out hope. Things
right.
can get a lot better and a lot different, and B, we also have to look for ways we can deliver that hope and make those dreams come true
Okay.
in a realistic way.
Yes, indeed. We both smiled because you said Mr. Alsop, and he happens to be one of our members of our church.
Okay.
Michael Alsop, he's just a great man. We've run out of time, and so I'm so glad that you came in, and much success to you and your book, Focus on Your Light, and all the other presentations and things that you have. This is Mr. Joe Trojak, and he is doing a great work in the Harrisburg area. Please, get his book. Help to inspire other young people to go into business and be successful. And remember, it's going to take teamwork to make the dream work, but it can be done. Mr. Trojak certainly has made it happen. And if he can do it, I'm sure others can do it as well. So we want to thank you for being on the show. Have
My
yourself
pleasure.
a great
Thank
day, and we'll see you next time here on Life Esteemed.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.